Might get underway. It is right on 4 o'clock and I can see that people are starting to join fairly quickly now, but I think we will get underway with the introductions to make the most of our time. So can I just introduce myself? My name is Bron Burr and I'm a member of the Schools Plus team, and certainly it's my pleasure to, on behalf of the whole team, welcome everyone today to our webinar. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands upon which each of us are joining today, but in particular the Ngunnawal people of the Ngunnawal country where I am joining you from, and certainly to pay my respects to their elders,
this is the PD,
past, present and future.
Yeah.
We are expecting quite a number of people with us today. Certainly the registrations were flowing in and it was certainly a great surprise and really terrific to receive the support that we have. Certainly from both from our Schools Plus community of schools, but also the broader education community. So welcome everyone. The interest has been not just in your participation, but also in the questions, the number of questions and the type of questions that we've received. And certainly thank you for those. Certainly is a testament, I think, to the interest in the topics that we're going to be covering today, and certainly to the calibre of our special guests in Scott and Wendy. On behalf of the Schools Plus team, can I also just make a special call out to all of the teachers and school leaders who are online with us. Certainly the last few months have been very challenging, and we'd like to certainly acknowledge that and certainly to extend our thanks to each one of you for the extraordinary contribution that you're making. So thank you very much. For those of you who may not be familiar with Australian Schools Plus, it is a national charity that was set up at about 5 years ago now with the purpose of supporting vulnerable children to succeed at school. Since our commencement, we're really proud to say that together with the very generous support of donors across the country, we have been able to distribute approximately $17 million to over 750 schools across our country. And in doing so, reaching around 250,000 students who have come from disadvantaged communities. So just giving them a lift up in the particular ways in which they need and identified by these school communities. The support that we provide, as I've sort of just inferred there, is the financial support to schools, but also through coaching with a particular focus on building capacity within the school community and the teams. And also in opportunities like today to actually share the insights and the learnings from the teachers and school leaders that are a part of our programs. When I mention the programs, one of those is our Teaching Fellows alumni, which actually comprises recipients of the Commonwealth Bank Teaching Awards. And I noticed in the registration list that we do have a number of our alumni with us today. Importantly, Dr. Scott Sleap is one of our teaching fellows and alumnus, and it's an absolute pleasure to have him joining us today to lead the conversation with our webinar, Learning Together, Learning and Teaching for the Next Normal. Scott will be joined by one of his colleagues from Queensland, Wendy Bode, who is the Deputy Principal of Global Tropics Future Project at Tharangawa State High School in Queensland. So great example of our states coming together and working for a common good. Together, Scott and Wendy will introduce us to two different initiatives that they have been leading to engage and encourage students from regional and remote areas around Australia to engage, encourage those students in STEM education, and I guess to aspire, help to aspire those students in STEM futures in their future, STEM careers in their future. Scott will also address some of the challenges and the related questions that you shared on managing change in learning and teaching that we've perhaps all been experiencing to some degree over the last few months. To both Scott and Wendy, seriously, very, very warm welcome to you both, and also thank you in advance for sharing your work. I have mentioned the questions quite a number of times already, but I wanted to let you know we shared those with Scott and Wendy prior to this afternoon, and they will address quite a number of them, I think, inherently in their presentations. But we will also have some time towards the end of both of the presentations, which will take us through to about 4:45, where we can actually also pose some of those questions or new ones that may emerge during the actual webinar. So I guess on that note, can I please encourage people also to share ideas, thoughts that may come to mind via the chat throughout the webinar, and also to use that to pose any other questions or thoughts that you may have. And we'll aim to pick that up, if not during, certainly towards the end of the actual webinar. So I guess on that note, and in the interest of time and knowing you have a lot to share, Scott and Wendy, can I pass over to you, Scott, to take us through the next half hour?
Yes, no problem. Just share my screen, first of all. Just coming in. So hopefully you're seeing that now.
Certainly are, Scott. Brilliant.
Okay. So just first of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be talking about teaching and learning, and particularly this idea of the next normal, and how the SIS program that I've been working on with my colleagues at the New South Wales Department of Education is looking to meet the challenge of a future-focused education system. Before I go on with my presentation, I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the homelands of the Wonnarua, Dungajung and Awabakal people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. I pay respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people who may be here today. I'd also like to highlight Bayami, who is the keeper of the Hunter Valley and the ancestral being for its people. I was very fortunate to be able to visit Bayami Cave in the Cessnock area as part of an excellent program called Connecting to Country. Again, one thing I'd highly recommend to any educator is to get involved in programs such as Connecting to Country to learn about Aboriginal culture and the meaning of connecting to the land. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the Commonwealth Bank and Schools Plus, not only for hosting this webinar, but for also all the work that they do supporting teachers and schools across Australia. I also are based in a school which is considered low socioeconomic, and really appreciate the fact that we need to do all we can to bend the gaps between the haves and have-nots in Australian education. In my presentation today, you'll get the overall theme of change. Change. And look, we're at the start of what's known as the fourth industrial revolution, which I'll elaborate on as we go through this speech. But what this is going to bring is unprecedented rapid change. And I also feel that the current pandemic may have had the effect of actually accelerating that change, particularly in education. So in regards to the changing nature of work, I just want to take you back into history, and I want you to look at these four jobs. First of all, I want you to look at the first profession, and I'm going to actually do that last. So in the comments section, I'd like you to identify what you think that job might be. And I'll just then move on to the second one. The second photo are penny boys. So this is a job that doesn't exist anymore, and thinking about it as a school teacher, you could just imagine the risk assessment that you'd have to do for that type of work. The third I've added because I come from the Hunter Valley, and which has got a long mining heritage. Mining does still exist, however, it's very different to what you see in that photo. It's much safer and much cleaner than what we've ever seen before. The fourth, of course, is a street lamp lighter, and this profession has disappeared as a result of changes in technology. So the changing nature of work has been around for a long time. It's just its speed has changed. But back to the first slide. Just so you know, I can't see the comment sections at the moment, so I don't know if anyone has guessed it. But this gentleman is what it's affectionately known as a knocker-upper. It's a great work if you can get it, but it doesn't exist anymore. This person's role was to actually tap on the windows and wake people up, a task now replaced by an alarm clock.
Huh. Two of the people had it, Scott.
Two people had it.
So Louis and Anthony, I think, although one was called the human alarm clock.
Yes, but its correct term is a knocker-upper.
And we had a knocker-upper.
Sally Ann Williams from Google, who actually, I stole that joke off. And you probably won't, I won't go on too many jokes because I'm not very funny. But talking about funny people, Adam Spencer. So Adam Spencer is a mentor for the program. He's an ambassador. And on the idea of the theme of change, I wanted to bring about the idea of STEM and its importance when it comes to the change agenda in education. Instead of me discussing it with you, I'm going to hand it over to Adam, who's a lot more articulate than what I am and a lot more exciting. So over to you, Adam.
The quote I love about this, I might come up with it myself, but I think I stole it from someone else. The pace of change has never been this fast before, and the pace of change will never be this slow again. We're at this incredible time where society is rocketing forward, and so much of that is being carried by STEM. Computing, big data, applied technology is where the future is being built. So we have to let young individuals know the opportunities that has, and we have to create a society that can harness that potential. That's why the teaching of STEM and the allocation of resources to STEM and inspiring teachers and students around STEM is so important.
So, change being rapid, and again, taking you back to history, I'd like just to draw your attention to this photo that was taken in New York, Fifth Avenue in the year 1900. If you have a look in there, you'll actually identify a car. So if you haven't been able to find it, I've just highlighted here. So that's an automobile amongst all horse-drawn carriages. So let's jump forward 13 years and see what's changed. Same street, but in a mere 13 years, we now have one horse-drawn carriage. So the idea of change is not new. It's just that the speed of change is occurring far more rapidly than before. And I'll leave you with this thought and to contemplate. Your children may be the last generation to be actually driving a car. Unfortunately for me, this has come too late. I had to teach my daughter how to drive, and my son goes for his license early next year. So bring on that a lot earlier. It'll save a lot of stress. So change and skills. As we discussed, as I discussed, the nature of the workforce has changed forever. In order to thrive in the current workforce, we need individuals who have very different skills to what we saw with our penny boys earlier, the lamplighters, the miners, and dare I say it, the knocker-uppers of the world. In 2015, the World Economic Forum published its list of skills required in 2015 and that of 2020. Contemplate that list. Have a look at the skill sets that are mentioned there. Now, for those who are teaching a HSC or a VSA or other forms of higher school certificate, how many of those skill sets are actually captured in that final year exam? So these are the skills that have been identified as what we need, but not necessarily are what we're valuing in our assessment. So in a recently published OECD report, The Future of Education and Skills, the paper contended that education needs to change as a result of the changing nature of work and the changing nature of our society. They mentioned the concept of this new normal, and I'd like to highlight the table that appears in the report that shows this. Interestingly enough, this was not produced before COVID, but excuse me, but when we actually have a look at this table, it talks about what the new normal in education would look like, what a traditional education system is like, and what an education system that embodies this new normal. So you can see we're moving from being more independent learners into being part of a larger ecosystem of decision making, of responsibility shared with education. So the whole idea of shared responsibility and an ecosystem of education comes to the fore. In both cases, outcomes are valued, but in a system that embodies the new normal, the process is also important, not just the outcome. And we see that in terms of the work we do in STEM around design processes, the skill sets that we just saw from the World Economic Forum. So the idea of being able to solve complex problems, to be able to think laterally, to be creative, and to be able to work in teams, have emotional intelligence and so forth. A lot of the approaches to curriculum traditionally are linear and standardised. The new systems are seen to be a lot less linear in the progression. So students tend to go on their own learning path, equipped with the knowledge that they need and the skills, rather than just going through a sausage factory type approach. A hero of mine in education is Sir Ken Robinson, who we're going to talk about later. And Sir Ken is very prominent about this need for having a non-linear progression in education. We all know, if you're a teacher, about how much accountability and compliance is in traditional systems. That accountability is not going away, but what's different in the new normal is that that accountability is added to improvement and continuous improvement models. So looking at feedback. So it's not about just ticking boxes, it's about finding ways to actually improve the system and looking at data that to ensure that that's occurring. And in testing, which is the most important thing, that there should be a move away from standardized testing, more into assessment for different purposes. And then going back to the work that the World Economic Forum did on the type of skill sets, we need to be able to assess those skills as well as the ability to recall information. The role of the student will change, or should change, from being passive to being more active in their education, and that the teacher becoming more of a facilitator of learning, which we've been hearing for a very long time. It hasn't really actually come into reality. I was very fortunate to meet with and work with Jonathan Barr from the OECD Employment and Skills Unit. Jonathan actually assessed the workforce development program that I worked on, which was identified as world's best practice. So we do know in Australia that we are able to do some really amazing stuff, and we're doing well on the world stage. But this idea, when he came to present for us on job polarisation, is really important, and it's actually potentially quite frightening. If you have a look at this graph, you'll see that there's actually been quite a big increase in low-skilled jobs as well as high-skilled jobs. And at the same time, what's considered those middle school skilled areas have been in rapid decline. Although this graph doesn't have Australia on it, we basically are moving towards a similar structure where there is an increase in low-skill workforce, and also in high. Now, my contention is that programs like the SIS program and what we're doing really needs to concentrate on providing those skill sets so that students can actually obtain those high skilled jobs. The middle skilled jobs are becoming less and less. We don't want generations of our students not being able to fully participate in full employment or be in those lower paid, low skilled areas. So where have all the middle skills jobs gone? Much of these are dwindling.
I was listening.
Sorry? Oh. So these jobs have been dwindling due to automation, digitisation, and the rise of things such as artificial intelligence. So I'm just going to show you a quick video that really sort of sets the scene of where middle skills jobs have gone. This is from, if you haven't seen it, IBM, and it's an AI program for Watson that looked at having an AI version of a person in jeopardy.
This is Jeopardy, the IBM Challenge. Here we go. Brad, if you're ready, make your first choice.
Let's take alternate meanings for 200, Alex.
4-letter word for a vantage point or a belief. Brad.
What is a view?
Yes.
After the first clue of the game, which Brad won, I had just this horrible feeling at that moment that he was as good as everyone said he was, and he was just going to run the whole board on us.
Watson.
What is shoe?
You are right.
We actually took the lead. We were ahead of them, but then we started getting some questions wrong.
Watson.
What is leg?
No, I'm sorry, I can't accept that.
What is 1920s?
No.
What is cheek?
No, sorry. Brad.
What is class?
Class, you got it. Watson.
What is Sauron?
Sauron is right, and that puts you into a tie for the lead with Brad.
The Double Jeopardy round of the first game, I thought was phenomenal.
Watson went on a tear.
Watson.
Who is Franz Liszt?
You are right.
What is violin?
Good.
Who is the church lady?
Yes. Watson.
What is narcolepsy?
You are right, and with that you move to $36,681.
Eventually went on to win that and beat the best Jeopardy players in the world. So the difference with AI systems now is they are now able to do things that people once did, and they're replacing jobs that was once seen as only being able to be done by person. So I mentioned earlier about the fourth industrial revolution. So there have been three. The first one was mechanisation. The second was mass production. The third was computer and automation. And we're pretty much still within that computer automation phase. But we're now starting to move into the fourth industrial revolution, which is about cyber systems. So that's the like AI, automation, big data, systems of systems approach. So society has changed and the workforce has changed. So therefore, we really need to start looking at how education is going to change to meet this new need. So again, CEDA, the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, warned that about 5 million jobs could disappear in the next 10 to 15 years because of these technological advances. Computerisation and automation could see more than 6 out of 10 jobs vanish. However, jobs will be created, but these jobs will be typically in what we've identified as those high-skilled STEM-related areas. So again, my contention is that we need to develop our young people to have these skill sets, and we need an education system that's fit for purpose. So why is STEM education important? So if you haven't heard these figures before, 75% of the fastest growing occupations require STEM skills. 65% of children currently in primary school today will assume a career that does not exist currently. Also, modelling done by organisations such as PricewaterhouseCoopers have identified that if we can just change our workforce by as little as 1% into these STEM roles, that will have a $57.4 billion increase in our gross domestic product. Particularly important at this time when unemployment and our gross domestic product is in decline. So now I want to move on to the next phase of this presentation and talking about blended learning and how that may have an effect on the work that we're doing. So I'm going to discuss the work of Michael Fullan and others in a paper that's just recently been published called Global New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. And it was published after the pandemic. So it looks at blended learning and the good parts and bad parts, if you like, of it. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. There's a lot of text in this. So this is available, these slides, so you can go back and read through it if you wish. But basically, the pandemic has disrupted all sectors of our society, and it's really revealed those fault lines, especially in our education system. The reaction to the crisis has generated some really impressive responses on part of individuals and school groups and educators. And I'd like to think the New South Wales Education Department would be seen as one of those outliers. In some cases, these public and private partnerships have filled the gaps. So again, on our theme about partnerships and working together, a big part of what we do in my program is using partnerships as a way of overcoming some of these fault lines that have appeared in our education system. So some systems have been able to rapidly develop remote learning experience and blended learning, but most have struggled to meet the needs of all. And I think there's not too many systems who have been able to meet that equity, access and capacity issue. And it's been found wanting. Prior to the pandemic, many education systems were stalled. And I believe that the pandemic has really exposed that fundamental need for that word again, need for change. So during the pandemic, the lockdowns saw this elevated importance for the use of digital systems. However, the schools that really thrived, according to Fullan and his authors, were those ones who used blended learning approaches to actually elevate the educational impact, not just move to a digital system. Blended learning combines the best of the in-school and also remote learning within digital engagement. So it's not all about digital. The authors of the studies also made these observations. They acknowledged that well-being is a critical part of learning, and that still needs to be done on the digital platforms. Technology has shifted from being a vehicle to deliver a mechanism for collaboration, social connectedness, and culture building. That's really important. And Wendy's going to talk a bit more about this later, that there are ways in which, although we're apart, we can be more together and more connected using these techniques. Self-regulation and learning to learn were key determinants of student motivation and success. So when given the opportunities, students stepped up. Students who found themselves with more choice and voice exceeded expectations and found ways to help themselves to collaborate with others. Collaboration amongst teachers and leaders emerged because the focus was clear of what they had to achieve. Also, in the absence of high-stake testing, systems relied on teacher and leader professional judgments. In New South Wales, in fact, we were kind of told a little bit, you're on your own. As a school, you decide on how you're going to deliver this. We all had some guidelines, which were we have to deliver a single unit of work, but how individual schools actually did that was really left up to them. So the teacher judgment was important. In a lot of these instances too, we didn't do assessment. So it was about the learning rather than external assessment. So the authors of this report also found that quality teaching must be built on the interests of the students via connecting them to purpose and meaning, challenging the students to high expectations, positioning learning goals that focus beyond just basics, using engaging pedagogies, and again, Wendy's going to touch more on that. Building relationships and belongingness, which is extremely important, particularly in these times when students were isolated. And providing opportunities to contribute to the whole world, which is something that STEM education allows you to do. All these things just happen to align with the purpose of the SIS program and also Wendy's program too, where we're looking at learning partnerships, learning environments, and inspirational pedagogical practices. So it was found that students who thrived in a remote environment during the pandemic demonstrated competencies such as critical thinking, creativity, resilience, independence, self-regulation, cognitive flexibility, and perseverance. Where did we hear that? These were the skill sets that were actually mentioned earlier. So moving quite along here, because I'm getting close to time. Access and equity. As I stated earlier, COVID has been a big disruptor and has indicated these fault lines, but there are some opportunities that we can actually work on. I believe that future education systems should include better access to ICTs to fully exploit blended learning. The good news is that high-speed broadband is coming to all areas of Australia at 2.5 times the speed of the NBN. And also our data is actually one of the cheapest in the world. So there is some capacity there for us to be successful. Now I just want to go very quickly about our my program, CISP. And basically it's a partnerships program that is designed to address the key areas of the national action for the Australian Council's National STEM Education strategy. The main components of my program are Academies of STEM Excellence, which employ project officers across 8 regional areas of New South Wales. Our virtual STEM Academy, which is in partnership with the Queensland program. The centre of everything we do is about partnerships with universities, industry and business. Very strong curriculum focus, particularly around the integration of STEM and using real-world examples, and high-quality professional learning. So, the best way to actually to witness what the CIS program is by the student's voice, and this is what this video will show.
I like STEM because I really love problem solving.
STEM is very encouraged at Cessnock High. They make it as if it's fun to learn.
We had to figure out what we had to do. It was like a mystery. Something that STEM has taught me is that through working together and persisting, you can overcome challenges that you haven't ever solved before.
I think it's really cool when industry come into our school and like teaches us about stuff.
To be able to have a look at the working lab allows me the ability to see firsthand what I could be doing later in life.
So the program has been very successful. So I'm not going to go through all these stats. I've got some stats coming up. You can look at those later. But it has got quite a big impact in schools. One of the things about the program, it's built on genuine partnerships. And if you have a look at that slide, you can see some major companies that are involved in our program. I just want to now talk very quickly about some practical examples of blended learning that we do within the Department of Education. So here are some projects that we worked on, mainly because of COVID. So our statewide staff rooms were established, so where we connected to all different teachers all around New South Wales to provide them with resources and advice and a place to actually ask questions about COVID. STEM 2020 On Demand was an online on-demand conference which was set up as a result of COVID. Our Learning on Demand programs, again, provided a whole heap of professional learning to teachers. Our HSC Hub has been phenomenally successful. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Our Everyday Math Hub has just been released. Also, for those students who don't have access to necessarily technologies at home, we partnered with ABC TV to produce a Learning from Home series. Also, our Dark Connections team provides online virtual excursions that go to thousands of students, tens of thousands of students across the state. And as a result of COVID, we've just instituted the STEM Education News program through CISP that provides assistance to teachers to learn about STEM resources and upcoming events. So just very quickly about the outcomes of our HSC Hub. It was only released in July 1st. We already have 34,000 users. There's 240,000 page views. It goes to 52 countries. So it's been phenomenally successful. Dark Connections, our virtual excursions, 23,000 registered users, 7,000 subscribers. The STEM 2020 On Demand conference had 5,300 registered users, 6,500 videos, and again, 30 plus countries. New opportunities that are coming in this space. Our I Teach STEM platform will be released in October, which has got real world examples of teaching units that you can do in STEM and also in engineering. Our STEM 2021 program is going to be bigger and better than what it was this year, with lots of extra content. We're working with a group called COSPAR, which is the world's most premier space conference, which is going to be in Sydney next year. We're going to have a lot of virtual blended learning approaches from that. The Virtual STEM Academy, we're expanding that in 2021. We're already working on an Australian New Zealand pilot this year. Open PTech is a program we're doing with IBM, so providing directed learning outcomes in STEM for students and teachers. And I'd just like to finish on this, and I'd like to pay my respects for Sir Ken Robinson, who is a bit of an idol for me, and is certainly someone who's had an impact on my work. And unfortunately, he's recently passed away. And I feel very privileged the fact that in a small way, I was able to work with him on the SIS program with the STEM On Demand. In one of his last presentations, he gave some really inspiring and great insights into, again, that theme of change. And he contends with this, these words: change happens where you are, and he asks for you to be the change. So I'm going to leave my presentation now with the last words for Sir Ken Robinson.
Thank you very much, Scott, for sharing so generously there with us. I'm going to move straight, without saying any more, I will move straight to Wendy and invite you to take us through the next part of our presentation. But thanks very much, Scott. Please, as Wendy's coming on, folks, if you do have any questions or thoughts for Scott, can you please share them on the chat, and we will try and pick them up towards the end of our webinar. Thanks again, Scott. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Bronwyn and Scott. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Walgarookaba and Bendel people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm speaking today in Townsville, North Queensland. Now, today I'm going to give you just a brief overview of our Queensland Virtual STEM Academy, which was established in 2017 by the Queensland Department of Education. In such a short time, the Academy has expanded and evolved considerably, and it is the perfect example of our new normal of teaching and learning. So we began a while ago, and now we are partnering up with Scott as well, and as Scott mentioned, to collaborate with New Zealand and some other states as well. But before I do begin about the Queensland Virtual STEM Academy, we need to discuss why, and why did the Queensland Department of Education come up with this concept all those years ago. And it all came from the Department of Education's Advancing Education and Action Plan for Education in Queensland. And we wanted to inspire a passion for STEM in our students, regardless of where they are across the state. And so that's why the Queensland Virtual STEM Academy was created. And we have this vision here of our network to inspire a passion and aspiration for STEM through innovative learning, enriching opportunities, and transformational partnerships. Now, in just 4 years, the Queensland Virtual STEM Academy network has expanded across the state. We began here at Thurringau State High School in Townsville, North Queensland, and we worked with the Queensland Academies for Science, Maths and Technology in Brisbane. And then the Academy network expanded to Far North Queensland and Rockhampton State High School in Central Queensland, And most recently, our Solid Pathways program has joined our QVSA network. Now, the QVSA enables like-minded students from across Queensland to be connected virtually and to learn from each other. So in our courses, we have students from a range of schools and a range of year levels, but we can have students who are living on the coast of Queensland, collaborating with students who live in areas close to the Northern Territory Queensland border. So because of the virtual capacity that we use, there are no barriers to distance. Up on the screen here, I do have some of the categories and the focus that we have for our students, and we do cater for students who are highly capable and gifted, Indigenous, female, rural and remote, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. In the photos here on the left, Josephine is a student from Mount Isa, which is a town very much west of Queensland. When Josephine first logged into our IC virtual platform, her face was just lit up and it made everybody's day. She was just so excited to be there. The other photo is of Shania. Shania is from Mornington Island State School in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and she is working with Matt. And Matt is in Brisbane and he's from the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. So Shania was working on a disaster resilience for a changing climate grand challenge, and we had Matt as our expert logging in to talk to the students about his work and helping them mentor them through the program. Now on the right hand side here, we have our total participation for 2020. This year we have 1,680 state school enrolments, and 994 of those are from rural and remote schools. In total, we have 141 state schools participating, and of those, 103 are from rural and remote areas. So we really are being able to capture all of the students working together across the state because of a virtual platform that we use called IC. IC is like it's a cloud-based platform that actually merges video conferencing and 3D gaming technologies that provides that immersive collaboration environment. The kids tell me it's like playing Minecraft, and they absolutely engage in the platform right from the beginning. As you can see from the picture, it actually places your avatar like a little card inside a 3D classroom. And you can the students actually move their avatars around to work in groups, change groups, to come up the front and listen to people. So the avatars actually move, and it is like a classroom. In this picture here, we have students from Charters Towers State, Richmond Hill State School actually, which is in Charters Towers, west of Townsville. And they are collaborating with some engineers from a mining site west of Brisbane. And that's in our Mining Advancements Grand Challenge. On the next slide, I've just got a 30-second video to give you a better idea of what IC actually looks like.
You have IC. Casey.
So as you can see, it's very different to the usual virtual platforms that we have. And the kids absolutely love being in there and having a class with other like-minded students from schools right across the state. Now, our courses are typically 10 weeks with 1 lesson per week, and we deliver skill builders and grand challenges. But today I just wanted to highlight our grand challenges. These courses are organised around an authentic, open-ended question, and we tailor them to be appropriate to our region and what our students are experiencing here. They actually require students to learn or use the inquiry process. So they have to create something, they have to develop a solution or come up with a prototype for an authentic audience. They actually use activities to explore and develop their ideas rather than simply demonstrating previously presented ideas. And it definitely requires 21st century skills, so critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. Probably one of the most important aspects of a grand challenge, we can move, yep, that's it, is having expert and industry partnerships involved in not only co-delivering the course, but also co-designing. So what kind of context would we want for this grand challenge, and what would the real world problem look like? We have experts come in from the James Cook University here and industry right across the country to help us co-design, co-deliver our programs and mentor the students. And that's how the students actually find out about the possible careers that they could have. Now, all throughout our courses, we always measure impact, and we do that in several ways. One of the ways is just finding out what the students' thoughts are. And up here, I've got some comments the students have made. The first one is, you're thinking up your own ideas and you're not told what to think. You can just let your ideas out. I have learnt to cooperate with people to solve problems. That will help me when I get a job. And there's two more down there that you could have a read of. So I'm always receiving amazing comments from students, parents, teachers and industry. But I've just picked out some here from parents as well. It's not just about academia, it's about passion, awareness and engagement. I believe programs like this have the potential to bring the best out in anyone, immeasurable improvement and personal growth across the board. And Morgan has loved the capacity to apply concepts to real world applications. He has started to talk strongly about pursuing a career in engineering and has really enjoyed talking to industry experts and getting feedback on their ideas. Another way that we measure impact is to survey students to see how their perceptions of STEM have actually changed. And on this graph here, like I've just taken one round from this year, but this is typical of all rounds. 80% of students, this first blue column, have said that they felt confident that they could apply what they've learnt from this course in their regular classwork. And the blue column represents those students who said it described them completely and mostly true. If we skip over to the third one, 89% of students have said that they are interested in studying more STEM courses in higher grades. And on the last column, 82% are saying they are more interested in STEM careers after completing this course. So it is definitely having an impact on their STEM perceptions. And most recently, we do work with the new Pedagogies for Deep Learning framework from Michael Fullan, and we've been measuring collaboration skills. On this graph here, the numbers across the bottom, 1 is limited evidence, 2 emerging, 3 developing, 4 accelerating and 5 proficient. And the blue line indicates to us how we measure the students' interpersonal and team-related skills before the grand challenge. And you can see the majority of students, or the peak on the graph, is sitting at the emerging phase. And then the orange line are the student skills after the grand challenge. And you can see that shift in collaboration skills has really moved up to the developing stage. And we were really surprised with the results. We shouldn't have been surprised, we had planned for this, but we were really happy with the results that we had achieved by measuring and teaching strategies for collaboration. Because you can see the graph on the right was the same as well. So most of students recognised that, well, we recognised that the students were sitting in the emerging phase when it came to understanding their team and how to solve problems. And then after the grand challenge, that had shifted up to developing. Now, that really was a brief overview of the Queensland Virtual STEM Academy. And we have a coordinator at each of our sites. So probably the best way to go about finding out more information is to check out our website there, that's on the screen, or we'll give our contacts to Bronwyn and she can share those out. But Bronwyn, that was about it for me today. If there was anything else, I'll take over to you now, Bronwyn.
Yeah, look, thank you very much, Wendy. And again, thank you to Scott. I think really at this point, it is open to the group that are online with us. And if you have any questions, please share them via the chat now and I can pick those up. But what I thought I might do is just kick off with 1 or 2 of the questions that had already been asked by the group. And I guess one of them is sort of sits, I guess, as part of, but also beyond the initiatives that you talked about. And just in terms of, well, I'll read the question verbatim. How can STEM be taught effective virtually if students don't have the materials, the workbooks at home, the support at home, perhaps the parental support? Just from your experiences, how have you gone about that?
Within Wendy's program, it's sort of done within a school. So when you talk about blended learning, it's also, you may have heard of the term flipped classroom. So flipped classroom and blended learning has been around for a while. So again, the whole idea of what we're talking about in blended learning is trying to the best of face-to-face teaching and then providing opportunities for students to go beyond that. But the problem still exists, as you said, in terms of students in lower socioeconomic areas and having those opportunities. One way to do that, like even when we had COVID, we were sending packs of gear to students. So be it via mail, or the students could come into the school and get a pack. With STEM, what we tended to do in COVID was we came up with a number of design challenges that you could use household items to build. So you could still get the idea of being able to do a not so much a grand challenge, but to do mini challenges within your own area. And we try to get students to pick projects that they can do at home with limited materials, but also have impact on the house. So like agricultural and gardening, like developing something that you could use beyond the classroom and would improve the local environment. Something that maybe even within the room, designing something that could make it more efficient to learn. But there's still a need for us to be able to overcome those digital divide issues. New South Wales Department of Education did provide computer equipment and did provide like internet dongles and things like that. In the new age, I think it is essential that education departments provide those type of resources to schools and to students that are in those underprivileged areas to try to level the playing field a little bit more than what it is. Because COVID has really shown the strength of these digital platforms, how good blended learning can be, but also showed that there's a big gulf between the haves and have-nots in technology.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Can I just ask a quick question? Obviously you're based there in New South Wales. Wendy, you're in Queensland. We have a national audience with us this afternoon. Are people able just to contact you? You're happy with that as a point of contact? Happy with that? I'm just sort of trying to summarise a couple of the questions there that are coming through.
Absolutely. Probably, again, LinkedIn and social media is a good way of contacting me. So Scott Sleap, LinkedIn. Yeah. I'm on all the social media platforms and things like that. And on Department of Education email, so scott.sleap. So sleep is spelt with SLEAP. at det.newsouthwales.edu.au, but I'm happy for you to post that. I shall put it in the chat.
Fantastic, and we can share it as well. Can I just ask one last question? I guess I'm very mindful of people's time, and we are right on 5. Several of the questions that came through prior to the webinar focused around parents and the role of parents in supporting children, particularly when working remotely. Wendy, perhaps can I throw to you for this one? Any thoughts on how, as a teacher, we can best support parents in that role as well?
Well, in our Virtual STEM Academy, we do deliver courses to students who are at home all of the time anyway, because they're on cattle stations or remote areas. So it is about just opening up the communication and being available to help them all of the time, or most of the time. During COVID, our Queensland Virtual STEM Academy, before COVID, we delivered through the schools. And then once COVID came along, we had to deliver through their homes, to their home. And that was a big shift for us, because we had hundreds of students who had to move over as well. And they were learning different platforms. And it's just making it more accessible to parents and easier for parents to be able to navigate, because they have enough pressures as it is. And with IC, it was quite simple. It was, one link downloaded and the students had it. But but it was just another pressure for parents, and just being always open to communication was the best way.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. And I'm sure that many people that are online with us today probably have either experienced that pressure and or have some thoughts as well. But thanks for that, Wendy. Look, folks, it is just on 5, so I might draw our conversation to a close. And can I do so by extending yet again a really very warm thank you to both Wendy and to Scott for sharing so generously this afternoon. Certainly you've inspired my thinking. I'm just taking away, you know, that notion around change, and we all have a role to play in supporting that, and supporting our students to be the best they can in that sort of environment. So thank you for sharing so generously from a practical level, from an inspirational level. Yeah, we're very grateful for your time in preparing and sharing with us. May I also just have a shout out to my colleague Honor, who works behind the background with these events and brings them all together. So Honor, thank you again for your support and helping us to bring this to all of the people online today. And last but certainly not least, thank you to everyone for participating and so generously giving your time to join us in this conversation this afternoon. So thank you. It is something that Schools Plus looks to do, and to provide that platform for educators and leaders in our profession like Wendy and Scott to share with others. So thank you very much. Just a couple of announcements. I know it was on the very first slide, but for those who may have missed it, the nominations for the 2021 Commonwealth Bank Teaching Awards open next Monday. So if anyone's interested, or you know anyone that may be interested, please look out on social media and also via the Schools Plus website for that nomination process. Certainly, I'm sure there are some even further inspirational educators out there this year with that have really shone. So please, that's what the awards are about, shining a light on the professional work that you do every day. We will, as Honor has already mentioned, we will post a recording of the video and share those contact details of both Scott and Wendy with you in the next couple of days. So thank you again, everyone. Really appreciate the time you've taken to join us, and please look out. There will be further events in the coming months, so we really hope that you can join us again. Thanks again, Scott and Wendy.